Picture this. You're standing in a field of endless flowers. The sun hangs frozen in the sky, refusing to set. Everyone around you is smiling, and you've never been more terrified in your life. Welcome back, horror fans. Today, we're dissecting one of the most disturbing films of the modern era, a movie that proves darkness doesn't need shadows. This is Midsommar, and if you thought you understood what horror looked like, Ari Aster is about to paint it in pastel colors and drench it in golden sunlight. Warning: this analysis contains full spoilers and explores deeply disturbing themes. Viewer discretion is advised.
Let's start where the nightmare begins. Not in Sweden, but in America, in the depths of winter, in the suffocating darkness of a studio apartment where Donnie Ardor receives a series of text messages that will shatter her world forever. The opening 20 minutes of Midsommar might be the most devastating prologue in horror cinema. Before we ever see a single flower crown or ceremonial robe, we witness something far more terrifying than any cult ritual: the complete annihilation of a person's support system. Donnie's sister, suffering from untreated mental illness, commits a murder-suicide, killing herself and their parents. The scene itself is presented with horrifying matter-of-factness. A blue-lit house, a running car, bodies in bed, a tube running from exhaust to window. It's not supernatural, it's not a jump scare, it's just devastatingly, heartbreakingly real. This is crucial to understand. Donnie isn't running towards something in this film. She's running away from a void so massive, so consuming, that almost anything would seem preferable. Her anchor to reality, her family, has been violently severed. And what does she have left? Christian, her boyfriend of 4 years, who, and let's be brutally honest here, is one of cinema's perfectly realized portraits of passive emotional abuse. Christian doesn't hit Donnie, he doesn't scream, he does something far more insidious. He makes her feel like a burden for existing. Watch how he interacts with her in those early scenes, the sighs, the patronizing tone, the way he was literally planning to break up with her before her family died, and now he's trapped by guilt and social convention. He's a gaslighter in academic clothing, constantly making Donnie question whether her very reasonable emotional needs are somehow excessive or crazy. When Christian's friend group, the aggressively obnoxious Mark and the academically competitive Josh, invite him to Sweden for Midsummer Festival, Christian doesn't tell Donnie. Why would he? He's planning his escape. But when she finds out, the guilt kicks in, and suddenly she's invited. Not because he wants her there, because he'd look like a monster if he uninvited her right after her family died. Already, before we ever reach Sweden, the film has established something terrifying. Donnie is completely, utterly alone. She has no family. She has a boyfriend who resents her existence. She has no support system. She is psychologically vulnerable in ways she doesn't even fully understand yet. And she's about to walk into a situation specifically designed to prey on exactly that vulnerability.
The transition from America to Sweden is jarring by design. We move from cramped apartments and gray skies to wide-open fields and perpetual daylight. The group arrives at the commune with Pelle, Christian's Swedish friend, who's been selling this trip like a tourist brochure come to life. The cinematography shifts dramatically. Everything is bright, clean, pristine. The Horga members wear flowing white garments. They smile constantly. They seem to exist in a state of perpetual serenity. And it's absolutely wrong. Here's where Astor's genius truly reveals itself. Most horror films use darkness, shadows, and things that go bump in the night. Midsommar does the opposite. In the land of the midnight sun, there are no shadows to hide in. Everything happens in full daylight. Every atrocity is committed in full view. The horror isn't what you might glimpse in the darkness, it's what you're forced to witness in the light. The first psychedelic trip scene is crucial. The group ingests some sort of hallucinogenic tea, and we watch as the edges of reality begin to soften. The grass breathes, the flowers pulse, faces begin to morph and twist. Astor uses visual effects sparingly but effectively, creating a sense that the boundary between the real and the unreal is becoming dangerously permeable. This isn't just a drug trip, it's a loosening of the rational mind's defenses. It's preparation. The Horga's rituals start small. Ceremonial dances, strange songs in Swedish, food that looks beautiful but feels somehow wrong. And everyone is always smiling. Even when they explain traditions that should seem bizarre or concerning, they do so with complete, unshakable calm. This is how they've always done things. This is natural. This is right. But Mark, ever the ugly American, makes jokes. Josh, the anthropology student, starts taking notes, seeing the Horga not as people, but as research subjects. Christian mirrors this attitude, viewing everything through the detached lens of academic study. They're tourists in every sense, consuming culture without understanding, taking without giving, observing without participating. Only Danny is different. She's not there to study or to party. She's there because she has nowhere else to be. Then comes the scene that transforms Midsommar from unsettling to unforgettable. The Ättestupa ceremony is introduced casually. The Horga explain that at age 72, their elders perform a ritual suicide, leaping from a cliff onto the rocks below. It's presented as beautiful, as natural, as an honor. The visitors are assured it will be dignified. It is not dignified. The first elder jumps. His body impacts the rock with a sickening crunch, but he's not dead. He's screaming. His leg is shattered, bent at an impossible angle. His face is partially caved in, and as he writhes in agony, the Horga descend on him and finish the job with a massive mallet, crushing his skull with methodical, ritualistic blows. The second elder, an elderly woman, jumps. Her death is even more brutal. This scene is a masterclass in horrific filmmaking. It's shot in bright, beautiful daylight. The cliff is surrounded by gorgeous pastoral scenery, and we're watching ritual murder presented as religious ecstasy. The Horga are wailing, but not in horror, in sympathy, in shared ceremonial grief. They're celebrating this. The visitors react with appropriate horror. They scream, they cry, they demand to leave. But here's where the psychological manipulation begins in earnest. The Horga don't become defensive or angry. They remain calm, empathetic even. They explain this is their way. Can't the visitors see the beauty in completing life's cycle at the peak of one's dignity? Can't they understand choosing when and how to die, surrounded by community, as opposed to wasting away in isolation? It's utterly monstrous reasoning presented in the most reasonable tones. And in this moment, we see the first crack in Danny's resistance. Because unlike Mark and Josh, who see only barbarity, Danny sees something else. She sees a community that confronts death head-on instead of hiding from it. She sees people openly expressing grief instead of suppressing it. After losing her family in isolation and silence, unable to truly mourn because Christian couldn't handle her emotions, she sees people who share suffering instead of bearing it alone. The seed has been planted.
What follows is a slow-motion disintegration of the friend group, each member picked off through their own fatal flaws. Mark is the first to truly vanish. After urinating on an ancestral tree, because of course he does, he's lured away by a young Horga woman. We never see exactly what happens to him, but later we'll discover his fate. His face has been removed and worn as a mask, his body reduced to a tool in the ritual machinery. Josh, desperate to finish his thesis, attempts to photograph the Horga's sacred text, the Ruby Rotter, in the middle of the night. He's discovered and beaten to death, though we only see the beginning of his end. His academic arrogance, his treatment of the Horga as subjects rather than humans, becomes his undoing. But Christian's fate is far more elaborate, far more psychologically devastating. He's been selected, chosen. A young woman named Maya has decided he will father her child. The Horga's matriarchs begin preparing him, manipulating him, using a combination of drugs, ritual, and social pressure. Despite having a girlfriend who's visibly falling apart, Christian succumbs. Whether it's the drugs, the peer pressure, or his own moral weakness doesn't really matter. The result is the same. The sex ritual scene is one of the most disturbing sequences in modern cinema, not because it's graphic, but because of its complete violation of consent and autonomy. Christian is drugged to the point of barely functioning. He's surrounded by nude elderly women who chant and mirror his movements. He's being used as a breeding tool, reduced to pure biological function. It's rape presented as ceremony, violation dressed up as honor. And Donnie sees it. Through a keyhole, she watches the man she's been clinging to, the last remnant of her old life, participating in this obscene ritual. Her psychological break is complete.
While her friends are being systematically eliminated, something far more insidious is happening to Danny. She's being welcomed. The women of the Horga adopt her. They dress her in their clothes. They include her in their rituals. And most importantly, they do something no one has done since her family died. They truly see her pain. The scene where Danny has a panic attack is the emotional core of the film. She's just learned about Christian's betrayal. She's spiraling, hyperventilating, losing control. And what do the Horga women do? They surround her. They mirror her breathing. They match her cries. They literally embody her suffering, sharing the burden, distributing the pain across the collective. It's the most seductive scene in a horror movie you'll ever witness. Because in that moment, Danny isn't alone. For the first time since her family's death, she's not being told to calm down, to get over it, to stop being so emotional. She's being told, your pain is real. Your pain is valid, and we will carry it with you. This is how cults work, not through force, but through filling needs that weren't being met. Dani needed family. She needed community. She needed people who wouldn't make her feel crazy for having emotions. The Horga provide all of this. The fact that they're also ritualistic murderers becomes almost secondary to the psychological relief they offer. The May Queen competition follows. Through a series of dances, Dani outlasts all other competitors and is crowned. She's dressed in an elaborate flower dress, so heavy with blooms she can barely move. She's carried through the commune in triumph. She is, at last, the center of attention, the chosen one, special, wanted. Everything Christian never made her feel.
The final ceremony is both cathartic and horrifying in equal measure. The Horga require 9 human sacrifices. 4 have already been taken: Josh, Mark, and 2 community members who volunteered. 4 more Horga elders will volunteer. But the 9th must be chosen by the May Queen. Dani must decide, will it be a random Horga member, or will it be Christian? Christian, by this point, has been drugged, paralyzed, and sewn into the hollowed-out carcass of a bear, the animal that represents outsiders in Horga mythology. He can't speak, he can barely move his eyes, but he can see Dani. He can see her make the choice. She chooses him. What follows is a masterpiece of ambiguous horror. The temple burns. Inside are the 9 sacrifices, including Christian, still alive but unable to escape. The Horga gather around the burning building and wail, a ritualistic scream of shared suffering. At first, Dani screams with them, horror-struck. But then, slowly, her expression changes. She smiles. It starts small, just a slight upturn at the corners of her mouth. Then it grows and grows until her face is split by a genuine, ecstatic smile as she watches her boyfriend burn alive in a bear carcass while surrounded by the corpses of her other friends and 8 cult members. The film ends on this image: Dani, flower-crowned and smiling, having finally found her family.
So what is Midsommar really about? On the surface, it's a folk horror film about a Swedish murder cult. But dig deeper and it becomes something far more complex and disturbing. It's about grief and trauma. Dani's journey is one of a person so psychologically devastated that almost any alternative to her current reality becomes appealing. The film asks, at what point does the human need for community override moral reasoning? When you're drowning in isolation, will you grab onto anything that floats, even if that thing is monstrous? It's about toxic relationships. Christian is never physically abusive, but he's emotionally negligent to the point of cruelty. He makes Dani feel like a burden for having basic emotional needs. The Horga, for all their murder and ritualistic horror, make her feel seen. The film suggests that sometimes even a destructive community is preferable to a toxic individual relationship. It's about cultural appropriation and academic exploitation. Josh and Christian approach the Horga as objects of study, not as people. They seek to extract knowledge and value without genuine respect or understanding. The Horga, in their way, simply return the favor,
extracting from the academics what they need, their lives, their bodies, for their own purposes. It's about the seductive nature of cults. Midsommar doesn't portray cult indoctrination as brainwashing or force. Instead, it shows how cults meet genuine psychological needs. The Horga offer everything modern society seems to lack: genuine community, shared emotional experience, clear purpose, and a sense of belonging. The horror isn't that they're so alien, it's that we can understand the appeal. And most terrifyingly, it's about the price of happiness. Donnie's smile at the end is real. She genuinely has found a home. But the cost was her individuality, her morality, and the lives of everyone from her old existence. The film asks, is it worth it? If you could trade your pain for belonging, even if that belonging required you to become something monstrous, would you?
Midsommar is a horror film that lingers long after the credits roll because it refuses to provide easy answers. Danny's final smile is a Rorschach test. Some see it as triumphant, a woman finally escaping a toxic relationship and finding genuine community. Others see it as tragic, a vulnerable person manipulated into joining a death cult. The most disturbing interpretation is that it's both simultaneously. True. This is horror in its purest form, not jump scares or gore, though there's plenty of the latter, but the horror of recognizing something of ourselves in the descent. The horror of understanding why someone might choose the burning temple over the cold apartment. The horror of realizing that sometimes the monsters don't drag you into the darkness. They welcome you into the light with open arms and genuine smiles. And you go willingly. What do you think? Was Danny's ending liberation or damnation? Drop your theories in the comments. If this analysis made you see Midsommar differently, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into horror's most disturbing films. And remember, the real horror isn't in the shadows, it's in the smile. See you in the next nightmare.